The sun rose over the quiet suburban town, its golden light pouring into the classroom where Mr. Fletcher, a seasoned history teacher, prepared for another day of lessons. Fletcher had earned a reputation over the years, not for his warmth, but for his strictness and no-nonsense attitude. To him, punctuality and discipline were non-negotiable values. His classroom operated like clockwork, and any disruption to his carefully maintained order grated on him. There was one student, however, who seemed to test his patience every single day. Rowan Carter, a quiet black teenager who always arrived late. Every morning, as the rest of the students settled into their seats, Rowan would slip in, trying to go unnoticed. His uniform was often a little wrinkled, and his face bore an exhaustion that Fletcher dismissed as laziness. Each time, Fletcher's irritation flared. "Late again, Mr. Carter," he would bark from the front of the room. "If you can't respect my time, why should I bother teaching you?" Rowan would apologize softly, his eyes downcast, and shuffle to his seat. Fletcher's cutting words didn't seem to spark defiance in Rowan, only a quiet resignation, which fueled Fletcher's irritation even more. In his mind, Rowan's lateness was a sign of disrespect, and he refused to let it slide. For weeks, this routine played out. Fletcher's comments grew sharper, and Rowan's lateness persisted. The other students avoided getting involved, but whispers began to circulate about Rowan's situation. Fletcher dismissed them as excuses. Soft-hearted nonsense, he'd muttered to himself. He believed in personal responsibility above all else. One Friday morning, as the bell rang and Fletcher watched Rowan slip into the classroom yet again, something unexpected happened. Rowan's exhaustion seemed more pronounced than usual, his shoulders hunched under an invisible weight. Fletcher barked his usual reprimand, but this time, Rowan didn't offer his usual quiet apology. Instead, he met Fletcher's gaze, his dark eyes heavy with an emotion Fletcher couldn't quite place: sadness, frustration, defeat. "I'm not late because I want to be," Rowan said, his voice steady but tinged with quiet desperation. Then he lowered his gaze, took his seat, and said nothing more. The words echoed in Fletcher's mind for the rest of the day. What does he mean he doesn't want to be? Fletcher dismissed the thought at first, unwilling to entertain the idea that Rowan might have a legitimate reason for his tardiness. But over the weekend, the memory lingered, gnawing at him. Fletcher wasn't a man who liked loose ends, and this felt like one he couldn't ignore. So, on Saturday morning, Fletcher made a decision that surprised even himself. He would find out the truth. He arrived early at the edge of town, where he knew Rowan lived. The area was modest, with small houses, some in disrepair, and narrow streets lined with aging cars. Fletcher parked a short distance away and waited. Just after dawn, he spotted Rowan leaving his house, carrying a backpack and walking briskly down the street. Curious, Fletcher followed at a distance, careful not to be seen. Rowan stopped at a small diner, where he put on an apron and began clearing tables. Fletcher's brow furrowed. A part-time job? He watched from the window as Rowan worked tirelessly, refilling coffee cups and wiping down surfaces. There was a quiet determination in the way he moved, a focus Fletcher hadn't expected. When Rowan's shift ended, Fletcher continued to follow him. This time, Rowan headed to a nearby grocery store, where he bought bags of food. Then he walked home, but instead of going inside, he approached a group of children sitting on the curb. The kids, dressed in mismatched clothes and clearly homeless, lit up at the sight of Rowan. He handed out food with a smile, chatting with them as if they were old friends. Fletcher watched stunned as the kids hugged Rowan in gratitude before disappearing into the streets. Fletcher's confusion deepened. Why would a teenager with so little give so much to others? As he stood there, trying to make sense of what he'd seen, an elderly woman approached him. Her face was kind but lined with years of hardship. "Are you looking for someone?" she asked gently. Fletcher hesitated before replying. "Yes, I'm here about Rowan Carter. He's my student. I've noticed he's late to school every day, and I wanted to understand why." The woman's expression softened. "Rowan is a remarkable boy," she said. He has no parents. They died in a car accident when he was just a child. It's just him and his grandmother now, and she's bedridden. Rowan takes care of her, works 2 part-time jobs to pay the bills, and still finds time to help those kids. They once helped him get his grandmother to the hospital in an emergency, and he's never forgotten their kindness. Fletcher felt a lump rise in his throat as the woman continued. Rowan dreams of becoming a software engineer. He studies late at night, after his shifts, because he wants a better life. Not just for himself, but for everyone who's helped him along the way. Fletcher stood there stunned. All the assumptions he had made about Rowan crumbled in an instant. The boy he had dismissed as lazy and disrespectful was carrying burdens far heavier than any teenager should. Later that afternoon, Fletcher knocked hesitantly on Rowan's door. When Rowan opened it and saw his teacher standing there, his eyes widened in surprise. "Mr. Fletcher," Rowan said, his voice uncertain. Without a word, Fletcher stepped forward and pulled Rowan into an embrace. "I'm so sorry," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I've been so blind. You are extraordinary, Rowan. Far more than I ever gave you credit for." Rowan stood frozen for a moment, then slowly hugged Fletcher back. "It's okay," he whispered. "I understand." Inside the house, Rowan's grandmother watched from her bed, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," she said softly to Fletcher. "Thank you for seeing him for who he truly is." From that day forward, Fletcher's perspective shifted completely. He became Rowan's biggest advocate, ensuring he had the resources he needed to succeed. Fletcher paid for Rowan's school fees and later helped him secure scholarships for college. Rowan, in turn, excelled in his studies, fueled by the support he had long deserved but never expected. Years later, as a successful software engineer, Rowan often reflected on that pivotal moment when a teacher who had once been blinded by prejudice chose to see the truth and change both their lives forever. Fletcher remained a cherished part of Rowan's life, a reminder of how one act of understanding and kindness could alter the course of someone's future.